My pet cat Snuffles had a habit of staying in the attic for extended periods of time. It wasn't unusual for her to be up there so late on at night when I wanted to go to bed. However, if I didn't commit to the usual routine of kicking her out for the night, she would have at some point, usually around 3 a.m., come into my room, hop on my bed, and meow in my face until I woke up to stroke her. I had worked tomorrow, so for her to do this would be very much an inconvenience. She was always a smart cat. She had this really funny way of climbing down ladders. When she would roll around the first step, round down 3 with scraping claws, and then jumped off the rest until she would land with a fairly heavy bump. I decided to lure her down from the attic with her usually favorite toy, a small ball covered in a turf of feathers, with a jingly bell on the end. The jingly bell jingle drove her completely crazy, and I knew as soon as she heard it, she would come scrambling across the attic to try and attack the toy. The string was long enough for me to chuck it there, but I wouldn't have been able to see her grab it onto it. I couldn't just go up there. As for one, my cat hates being picked up, so trying to get her down that way was pointless, and well, half climbing a ladder and playing with the cat was hazardous waiting to happen. I walked underneath the attic hole and tried the light switch. I watched the room above flash like lightning before the bulb burst. Was left in darkness. Wonderful, I murmured to myself. I knew the light bulb was going to break at some point. It had been a while since the last been changed, so I wasn't worried. I get a hold of the stick of the toy, flinging the thing up into the attic. I heard soft thud and jingles as the toy coiled with the floor. Then I wiggled it around a bit. Jingle, jingle, jingle. I took a couple of moments. Then I heard it, the sound of soft, scuffling paws across the floorboards. I knew my cat would take the bait, and she always did. The sound stopped when they reached the midpoint of the attic. Then it was replaced with a loud pounding and some scratching. I tried to pull the toy like you would a fishing rod so I could bait her. It was stuck, and soon it was latched onto my cat's paw as she played with it. I could still hear the constant jingling, and every so often another thud. Feeling free to come down any time soon, I chuckled quietly to myself, tugging on the toy, finding my cat surprisingly strong. The end wouldn't budge. I needed to lead her to the opening of the attic. Then, as usual, she would get the hint and come down on her own. Meow. I recognized the sound anywhere, my beloved Snuffles. Meow. I got the point that Snuffle just came down already. I told her before I felt something soft and fluffy circling my ankles. I looked down to see Snuffles pressing herself against my skin, meowing at me. What the? I looked back up into the darkness. I could still hear the scratching and the faint jingling of the toy, as something was still playing with it. I looked back to my cat, whose eyes had dilated as I looked towards the opening, and then suddenly I watched all the hairs on her back stood up. She hissed at the ceiling. I dropped a hold of the toy as it hung in the air, still attached to whatever was holding it. Then there was silence. I could hear its nails scraping against the metal, and I was out the door by the time it had hit the second floor with a very loud bang. I rushed to my neighbor's house and called the police. There were no way I was going back into that house with that thing. When they finally arrived, there was no sign of anything inside my house. I could have believed I was just imagining things, except that I found the cat toy covered in some black ooze liquid and my floorboards completely shredded.